Welcome to Unfolded Enigmas. Today, we revisit one of aviation's most puzzling and controversial disasters, EgyptAir Flight 990. On October 31st, 1999, this Boeing 767 plunged into the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 217 people on board. The investigation that followed would spark a heated international debate, with US and Egyptian authorities reaching vastly different conclusions. What really happened that night? Was it a mechanical failure, human error, or something more deliberate? Join us as we unravel the complex details and conflicting theories surrounding this tragic event. EgyptAir Flight 990 embarked on its journey from Los Angeles International Airport, one of the airline's key transcontinental routes. Scheduled to make a stop at New York's JFK Airport before continuing to Cairo, the flight was operated by a Boeing 767-300ER, a trusted aircraft known for its reliability on long-haul routes. That night, it carried 203 passengers and 14 crew members, including business travelers, families, expatriates, visiting loved ones, and a group of Egyptian military officers returning home after training in the United States. The first leg of the flight, from Los Angeles to JFK, was uneventful. The aircraft arrived as planned, refueled, and prepared for the final stretch across the Atlantic. The crew conducted routine checks, the weather was clear, and all conditions pointed toward a smooth continuation to Cairo. Taking off from JFK in the early morning hours, the flight seemed normal. As the aircraft climbed to cruising altitude, the cabin lights dimmed and passengers settled in for the overnight trip. Many prepared to rest as the crew, seasoned professionals with thousands of flight hours, guided the plane steadily at 33,000 feet. Then, suddenly, everything changed. Just before 2 a.m., air traffic controllers noticed something was wrong. The plane, which had been cruising smoothly, started descending abruptly and rapidly. Calls to the cockpit went unanswered. There were no distress signals or emergency codes. In a matter of moments, the plane vanished from radar, leaving only questions in its wake. In the quiet darkness over the Atlantic, EgyptAir Flight 990 had disappeared. What came next was a frantic search and rescue operation, with air and sea teams rushing to locate any survivors or wreckage. The waters off the Massachusetts coast were cold, deep, and dark, making recovery efforts difficult. Yet as daylight broke, pieces of the puzzle began to surface. Small fragments of the aircraft were discovered, but there were no signs of fire or in-flight breakup, just scattered debris that deepened the mystery. Eventually, recovery teams located two crucial pieces of evidence: the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. Known as the black boxes, these devices could withstand immense pressure and offered the only clues to what might have happened in the cockpit. What these recorders revealed would soon become the centerpiece of one of the most controversial aviation investigations in history. Because the crash occurred in US territorial waters, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, was tasked with leading the investigation. Their methodical approach began with the recovery of the black boxes, which contained the aircraft's final moments. Investigators also examined radar data, communication logs, and wreckage from the ocean floor. Their goal was to reconstruct the flight's trajectory and determine why the plane had abruptly plunged into the Atlantic. The cockpit voice recorder revealed a series of events that immediately captured attention. After reaching cruising altitude, the captain left the cockpit for a break, leaving the relief first officer, Gamil al-Batouti, in command. While alone, al-Batouti was heard repeating the phrase, "Tawakkalt ala Allah," which translates to "I rely on God." Moments later, the autopilot was disengaged and the plane entered a rapid descent. The flight data recorder indicated that deliberate nose-down trim inputs, adjustments to the controls that make the plane descend more sharply, had been made repeatedly. When the captain returned, he exclaimed, "What's happening? What's happening?" The data showed a struggle to regain control, with attempts to pull the aircraft back up. Despite these efforts, the descent continued until the aircraft struck the ocean. The NTSB concluded that there was no mechanical failure. The systems appeared to be functioning properly before the autopilot disengaged. Based on the recorded control inputs and the sequence of events, they determined the descent was initiated deliberately. This conclusion, however, sparked immediate controversy. From the outset, the Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority, ECAA, took issue with the NTSB's conclusion that Gamil al-Batouti, the relief first officer, had deliberately caused the crash of EgyptAir Flight 990. They immediately launched their own investigation, rejecting the idea that al-Batouti's repeated utterance of the phrase "Tawkalt ala Allah" implied suicidal intent. Instead, the ECAA emphasized that this was a commonly used expression of faith in Egypt and held no sinister meaning. Egyptian officials argued that focusing on this phrase demonstrated a lack of cultural understanding on the part of the NTSB, leading to what they perceived as an unfair and biased interpretation of the evidence. Rather than human intent, the ECAA centered its investigation on the possibility of a mechanical issue within the aircraft's control systems. They focused particularly on the elevator control mechanisms, which play a crucial role in regulating the aircraft's pitch. Egyptian investigators were also critical of the NTSB's methodology. In their view, the investigation should have emphasized thorough technical testing and analysis. As a result, Egypt's investigation reached a starkly different conclusion, rejecting the idea of deliberate action. From the start, the investigation into EgyptAir Flight 990 revealed a fundamental split in how the tragedy was interpreted by the US and Egypt. The NTSB, taking the lead as the crash occurred in US territorial waters, pointed to a series of intentional control inputs as the direct cause of the plane's rapid descent. Their analysis highlighted several key factors: the deliberate disengagement of the autopilot, repeated nose-down trim commands, and the sequence of events captured by the cockpit voice recorder. For the NTSB, these findings were not only consistent with intentional actions, but also seemed to rule out mechanical issues. They found no evidence of system malfunctions or technical anomalies that could explain such a sudden and sustained dive. As a result, the NTSB concluded that deliberate actions by the relief first officer were responsible. Egyptian authorities, however, firmly rejected this conclusion. The Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority, ECAA, argued that the NTSB's focus on human intent was premature and overlooked plausible mechanical explanations. They questioned why certain technical possibilities, such as a failure in the horizontal stabilizer or the elevator control system, were not more thoroughly explored. According to Egyptian investigators, even a subtle, undetectable mechanical issue could have caused the nose to pitch downward and made recovery impossible. They viewed the NTSB's reliance on cockpit voice recordings and control inputs as a narrow approach that ignored other viable scenarios. The contrasting findings created a deep international divide. While the NTSB stood by its conclusion of deliberate inputs, Egypt insisted on a mechanical explanation. This lack of agreement left the cause of the crash officially disputed, underscoring the difficulties of conducting investigations that span cultural and political boundaries. This disagreement became a lasting reminder of how cultural differences and investigative methods can shape our understanding of aviation disasters. The crash of EgyptAir Flight 990 was a profound tragedy for the families of the 217 people who lost their lives, but its impact reverberated far beyond the immediate grief. It served as a harsh reminder of the complexities inherent in modern aviation investigations, especially those involving multiple nations. The stark divide between the conclusions drawn by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, and Egypt's Civil Aviation Authority, ECAA, highlighted how differing cultural, technical, and political perspectives can complicate the search for truth. Each side viewed the same evidence, data from flight recorders, cockpit voice recordings, and recovered debris through their own distinct lens, and neither could convince the other to adopt its conclusions. In the years since, EgyptAir Flight 990 has remained a controversial and unresolved mystery. The controversy highlighted the importance of transparent, unbiased investigations and showed how crucial it is to address both human factors and technical systems. The incident prompted renewed focus on improving flight crew screening, better interpreting cockpit voice recordings, and strengthening international cooperation. More than 20 years later, EgyptAir Flight 990 remains an unresolved mystery. The conflicting conclusions of the NTSB and the Egyptian authorities have left this case in a state of perpetual uncertainty. While some see it as a clear example of deliberate action, others believe mechanical failure is a more plausible explanation. What's undeniable is the impact this tragedy had on aviation safety and investigative practices. Thank you for joining us on Unfolded Enigmas. If you found this story compelling, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries that continue to challenge our understanding.